Welcome to Cooking to Feast. Today, we're taking a bunch of cream cheese and the rest of the stuff here, and you know what we're already doing. We're making a cheesecake, and we're putting a pumpkin cream pie right on top of it. So to start off, we have, of course, our cream cheeses, sugar, sour cream, vanilla, heavy cream, eggs, salt, graham crackers, and then butter, and the rest of the mix for the pumpkin pie. We're going to start with our graham crackers. I like the honey ones. I recommend a 9-inch spring-form cake pan for this, and I cut out a piece of parchment paper for the shape of it. For this, we're going to use our graham crackers and anywhere from 13 to 15, and there's about 9 in each one. The reason I say 13 to 15 is because it depends on how thick you like your crust. If you like a little thinner, I recommend backing off on the amount you use, and if you like it thicker, use more. So put them in your food processor, and then you're going to want to pulse these, and it won't take very long, but you're just going to pulse them until they're smooth. The idea here is to break it down small enough so that we can mold it to fit the shape of the springform pan. To this, you're going to add 1 tablespoon of brown sugar, 2 tablespoons of regular white sugar, and then put your lid back on, and then pulse it together until it's smooth. If you don't have a large food processor like this, just use a large bowl and whisk it together until it's smooth. To this, we're going to add 6 tablespoons of butter. This is what's going to bind or adhere everything together so that when it bakes, you'll actually have a nice shell, kind of similar to a dough, but obviously with graham crackers. As you pulse it together, it will slowly start spreading the butter around and coating each little grain of graham cracker. You're going to see here that eventually, when I pulse it, that it's going to stop moving. It's going to become really hard to move, and that's about when it's done. You'll see here on the sides of the walls that it's sticking and clumping together already. And then on further review, I'm going to take a little bit and try to clump it together in my hand. If it sticks together and clumps, it's good to go. Look at that. It's good to go. For the final bit, I would just recommend using your hand or a whisk in a bowl and just making sure it's all evenly coated. Nothing might have stuck to the sidewalls of the processor and then didn't mix together into a nice smooth texture. So get your springform pan and then gently dump some of your mixture out there. We're going to start by trying to spread it evenly around to the outer walls. This part of the process is just about getting the consistency right. So you want a thin but not too thick layer on the bottom, and then you want to push it up to the sidewalls. It's going to be a little bit thicker at the edges than it is at the bottom. You're going to want to go about 1/3 of the way up the springform pan, or if you want a shallower crust, that's fine too. But the end result is you want at least a little bit up the side of the pan so that nothing leaks out the side of the springform. Put that aside for now, and we're going to focus on the ingredients for the cheesecake. It's important that everything for the actual cheesecake is at room temperature so that it mixes well together. Start with 4 packages of our cream cheese, and we're going to put it into this stand mixer. If you don't have a stand mixer, of course, use a hand mixer. And if you don't have that, then, well, you can use a whisk, but it's going to suck. So anyways, turn your stand mixer on, and then we're going to blend this together. We're really trying to whip this up almost to the consistency of that if you're going to use it for like a frosting or something like that. You'll see here that a lot of it is getting inside of the whisk, so definitely take a break and push it out so that you can get a nice whipped consistency. You don't want half of it whipped and then half of it still like that real thick cream cheese in there. So take your time, and then this is your final product here. To this mixture, we're going to add 1 cup of sugar. This is still, it's kind of like frosting, cream cheese frosting, if you've ever made it to this point. And you're going to add this sugar into it and whip it a little bit more. You don't want to over whip it, but just get it nice and incorporated. The type of texture that you're going for is going to look something like this. It's no longer the thick cream cheese that you are used to when, like for a bagel or something like that, but it's nice and light and fluffy. I recommend, even if using stand mixer, to take the bowl out and make sure that you get the sidewalls and everything scraped off, because you don't want chunks of regular cream cheese in there. This is the consistency you're looking for. It's light, it's airy, and it's very smooth. To this, we're going to add 3/4 of a cup of sour cream. It might seem weird if you're not used to making cheesecakes to add sour cream to this, And don't worry, the flavor is not going to impact it. It has a little bit of tanginess and it helps it from not drying out. 1/3 cup of heavy cream is next. This is definitely going to help with the richness of it and also help it from not drying out as well. To that, we're going to add 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Maybe in a future video, I'll show you a tutorial of how I make mine at home. It's pretty easy. It just takes time to actually extract the vanilla, as it is an actual fermenting process. So lastly, we're going to add a pinch of salt to this, but this is definitely not going to make it salty, but you definitely want to have it in there. So finally, we're going to incorporate all of this together with our stand mixer. So lock it down and turn it back on. Just incorporate it just enough until it's smooth. Then take it out again, use your spatula, and run it around the rim to make sure nothing wasn't incorporated and smooth into the mixture. Finally, we're going to add our eggs. Remember, room temperature eggs. And then turn your stand mixer on and incorporate them one at a time. You'll see here, once the yolk has kind of been uniformly distributed into it, then I move on to the next one. Do these one at a time, and you can break it off right into it. Or if you feel more comfortable and want to break them all into a bowl and then pour them in one at a time, go for it. This is one of the last steps in the actual batter of the cheesecake. Again, don't over incorporate anything from here on out, but it will be very forgiving since we're going to be covering this up with a pumpkin pie. One of the big things if you're making a normal cheesecake is that you don't want to over incorporate air into it and then it'll deflate on you. In this case, it's not a big deal, and that's why I'm not really showing a lot of attention to it. You should have a nice texture like this. It's a little bit runny, but not too wet. Grab your springform pan back. It's now time to pour our mixture into it. You're going to use the whole thing and slowly pour it into the springform pan. This will completely cover up all the crumbled graham crackers, and then in fact will go up to almost the top of it. If for some reason you don't have the same type of room at the top of it, stop pouring as much into it. You'll see here in a second, the fact is we do need to leave a little bit of room for the actual pie that we're going to be putting there. And since the pie we're making is made on the stovetop, and you'll see that soon, you'll need a little bit of room so we can hold it into this container. For this specific pan, it'll leave about 1 inch at the top, and that's of the same amount that we'll need for the actual pie. So the last part is take a baking sheet and then wrap the bottom with aluminum foil. We're doing this so that when we eventually add the water to it, it won't leak or the pie filling itself won't leak out into the pan. We're going to add water to this so that we create a moist environment, and we're going to bake this at 325 for 75 to 85 minutes. Essentially, you're going to want to make sure that it isn't runny in the middle, and that's why it's 75 to 85 minutes. Once it's not too jiggly in there, that's when you know it's done. Crack the oven and let it come down to temperature. You'll see here that it did deflate just slightly, and again, that's okay. Actually, that's pretty good because it deflated evenly, and now we have a flat surface for which we can put our pie on there. You'll see that it's pulled back a little bit from the edges, and this is what we want. For the pumpkin cream pie, we're going to use a non-stick pot, and we're going to use vanilla cook and serve pudding. Very important that you use the cook and serve kind. If you want more detail or more elaborate, there's a whole tutorial on making this part of the pie for just a normal dough and pie version. Add your vanilla cook and serve into the pot. Next, we're going to add a tall can of evaporated milk right into this. All ingredients are just going to be mixed together. So once you have dumped everything out into it, we're going to move on to our pumpkin spice. Add 1 teaspoon of it. You don't have to use pumpkin spice. If you want to blend it together and make your own blend, that's fine. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract into it, and this is going to help ramp up the vanilla flavoring. Next up is 1 egg. You can scramble it before you put it into the pot, or you can thoroughly mix it once it's into it. 3 tablespoons of sugar to make sure that this tastes great. And then finally, 1 cup of pumpkin. 100% pure pumpkin. Do not use a pumpkin pie mix. So take your pumpkin, I like that Libby's brand a lot, and then put it into your mixture. Mix it together until it's all blended and there is no hunks of anything remaining. Take your time on this and then turn it on to a medium heat. You're going to want to keep stirring this the whole time. Of course, you don't have to rapidly stir it, but just make sure that it's not sticking to the bottom or it will burn. Think of making something like pudding since we put it in there, and it's going to gradually thicken up. As you can see here, it's already starting at the bottom to thicken up. After a couple minutes, you'll see that it's much thicker overall, but it's not quite yet to where we want it to be. It's still on the liquidy side. Continue it until it's boiling a little bit more. You'll see the bubbles start to form and then rise, but it still needs a few more minutes from here. Finally, you're going to see a consistency that's much thicker, and you'll know when it looks like this and it's not falling off the spoon very easily that it's done. Another good indication is if you stop stirring it for any time, bubbles start bursting from the bottom. So for our cheesecake, run a knife along the edges just to make sure nothing's sticking so that it doesn't tear apart when you open up the clasp and remove the outer wall of the pan. Dump the pumpkin cream pie mixture directly into the springform pan. You're going to take the whole contents of the pie and then put it in there, and then we're going to smooth it out over the top of it. However you smooth it and allow it to cool is how it's going to look. So you might want to take your time and make sure that it looks good and smooth all the way across, because when you're feasting with your eyes first. And this is what your final product should look like before we chill it down. So make sure it's as good as you want it to be, and then chill it overnight to set up. This is for the cheesecake, and this is for the pumpkin cream pie. This is what your final will look like. You'll see a distinct layer of the pie, you'll see a distinct layer of the cheesecake, and then of the graham cracker crust. Indulgence is the only way to describe this. So this is Cooking to Feast. I hope you enjoy, and subscribe for more.